Okay, so here we are with the Lehman College delegation where I gave a class last October 22nd, 2013. So firstly, how do you like the class, by the way? It was on a controversial issue, right? The issue of democracy in Cuba.
Engaging, yeah.
It was very engaging, very good.
Yeah?
I was engaged and I was learning a lot of information I've never heard before
Yes.
about Cuba.
Uh-huh.
And I was just at a lock with the topic that you're giving.
Oh, that's really great. That's really good.
Question a lot of things, though.
Pardon?
It made you question a lot of things.
Question a lot of things,
Right,
yeah.
A lot
It's a
of,
tremendous
like,
contrast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, right? It's a contrast from what they tell us about Cuba and what the reality
Yeah,
is.
like the
It's a tremendous
politics.
contrast.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
the
especially the
perception. My
politics. We all
perception
have this
changed the
view
bias.
of Cuba, and what you brought to the class was that it's not all it seems. It's like we get these stories from Cuba, but it's not. It's more into it than
Yes.
what we seem to know about it.
Oh, that's really good. I'm really happy that. Did you speak to other students as well, aside from yourselves, who attended that class? And
Yeah.
yeah. And is the reaction pretty much the same, or
Yeah.
it's very?
Try to get the message out that, look for more histories than what you're just being told.
Yes.
People just accept what they hear and they don't try to look outside of other information.
Yeah.
So
That's true. But
Basically, different points of view of people.
yeah,
Just gave the word democracy a whole new meaning to me, you know? It's
a whole new
incredible.
meaning for
A whole new
democracy.
meaning, a whole new
Yeah.
meaning. It's incredible.
yeah. That's just in 1.5 hours. Yeah, well, that's
I
good.
thought it was like interesting how that was common knowledge. Like everybody knew Cuba for it to be this certain way, and it's like how could it get out to be like this? Like how did everyone get to this point? Like this point that they know Cuba to be like not a democracy, and like we didn't know anything about it. Like
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
I think that's one of the main problems is the misinformation and disinformation by the mainstream media. Either they ignore Cuba, or they completely misinform the people with regards to Cuba, with regards to democracy in general, also with regards to Venezuela. A lot of disinformation with regards to Hugo Chavez. And here we are in the Venezuelan consulate in New York. I mean, do we feel oppressed by Hugo Chavez and Venezuela? Contrary, it's, as far as I can see, it's liberated territory in New York, where new ideas can flourish. We have a chance to come here in New York and exchange on the issue of democracy in Cuba, Venezuela. So I'm really happy that, I remember when I was there, I sort of appealed to the students to come here this evening. And I figured maybe one or two would show up or no one would show up because I know we got 4. That's a pretty good delegation, I'm really happy. And I also got a new follower on Twitter I think within 12 hours.
That's always a
He,
accomplishment, right?
he tweeted me and we've been back and forth tweeting and all that. So this is encouraging for me, but because as you know, dealing with this very controversial topic of democracy in Cuba, it's really a hot topic, and there's a lot of pressure against myself and other people who deal with this thing because there's so much disinformation. It's what?
You can have a hot debate over
Oh yeah, a hot
I mean, look at
debate.
the headlines right now, what we're doing with Obamacare and everything like that.
Yes.
Cuba didn't have to even go through that.
Yeah.
It's like an amazing, such a small country, so developed in a spectrum that we haven't even come close to.
That's right.
And it's amazing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
It gives democracy to me that we have a whole new meaning. Like, is it a democracy? Like,
Yes.
is it? But it's incredible. I think it's incredible.
That's really great. So I'm happy I gave, if I remember correctly, I gave those examples of Lehman College with regards to the accomplishment in Cuba with regards to health care and education. And I think I mentioned that when we have these problems, whether it's in Canada, United States, with regards to health care or tuition hikes, I gave the example, one of your colleagues wanted to go to law school in Fordham, but he didn't have the money to do it. Now, if you would go and mention this to a Cuban, that you have to pay to go to school, they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so
because
surprising to me. Like,
they don't know, what do you mean,
education.
pay for education? It's completely out of the mindset of the Cuban political culture, paying for education, paying for health. This is since 1959, since the beginning, since 1960. So I'm not unhappy I gave those examples. I didn't want to give the impression everything is perfect in Cuba, but I want people to understand we're talking about 2 different systems. You know, one is based on human values, what the needs of the people, and the, you know, providing the actual possibility for people to participate in their own future, compared to what we have here. That's why when I mentioned the role of the National Assembly in Cuba, you know, it goes through a lot of activities, it consults with people on a lot of legislation. Other laws are acted rapidly that are popular, but you never see the Cuban Parliament paralyzed, you know, as it is the United States. Why? Because they're just fighting amongst each other, jockeying for positions in the next elections. So we're talking about, you know, as you say, two different situations.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the contrast between the systems, because they work differently for each for both countries. It's clearly working for Cuba; they don't have to pay for education, and it's like it makes you want to know how are they doing this? Like, is the United States basing this off of anything? Like, are they trying to get this type of same system? Like, or are they fighting against it? Like, it's really interesting.
That's good. I'd like to, Carol, I want to introduce you to Carol Delgado. She is the head of the consulate here of Venezuela in New York.
Hi.
And it's because of her and her other comrades and the other people involved in the consulate here that we're able to have this meeting right here. And before you came, I mentioned to her that I spoke at Lehman College, one of the several colleges that I spoke in New York. And here we are. We have 4 students from Lehman College who came here. I invited them specifically when they were there, and here they are this evening. And one of the things that they mentioned, you missed that, was that they, you know, in the talk about democracy in Cuba and, you know, other examples such as Venezuela, it opened up an entirely new horizon for them. You know, what is democracy compared to the disinformation that they're fed by the mainstream media. So for me personally, not only I'm happy that they're here, but I'm happy that they came here to tell me, I mean, you missed that part, but it'll be on YouTube, how that it was really engaging and it opened up their minds to another way of thinking that is not based on the mainstream media in the United States. I mean, you could, what?
We don't want to depend on other people for information. We want to look for it ourselves. So definitely open their eyes to that. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's very important that you search for the truth, because the media, they are always trying to put an ideological mindset in everyone, because that's the only way to keep the control of society. So if the youth do not rebel against that, who is going to do it?
That's right.
When somebody has kids to support and already has family commitments. So I think in the youth lies the power and lies the future. So, but of course you have to be willing to search for the truth, because many lies, I mean, the way media frames information, you know, it's a machine of disinformation, and you have to understand that you are a victim of it, and it's really amazing. And for example, when we were in Venezuela and there was this coup against President Chavez, my husband could not believe that what the media was saying in the U.S. How come? There is a coup going on, and they are saying that there is a transition, and they were bringing democracy in Venezuela, and there is a transition, everything is peaceful. And there were like million people on the street saying, Chavez, 2002 coup.
2002,
and
right.
They would not project anything of what the people were claiming, what the people were saying. It was invisible. And there were instructions that not Chavez on TV. So it was nothing that related to Chavez was totally banned from TV. And you have to see that. And we're, you know, for hours living in a dictatorship. And they start persecuting all the people in government and putting them in jail, and they were going after them. So it was really amazing. Some people got killed. So it was only 24 hours of fascism. It's like they dare to do something like that when you have a president that has been elected with, you know, 60-something% of the vote, and still the right there to do some things. And media is There are so many lies that you don't know where to start. Like for line number one, because
Yes.
it's really sad.
Yes. I think that one of the main victims of media disinformation over the last few years has been Hugo Chavez. Why? Because he did something very heroic and correct. He led his people in 1998 against the old two-party system that existed in Venezuela that was controlled by the United States. And then he won the elections in 1998, and he promised in the elections that when elected, the first thing he will do was to organize a constituent assembly. So the people will be involved in organizing a new constitution. And that's what he did. When he was elected in 1998, and he had to pledge allegiance to the system on the Constitution, he said, I pledge on this moribund Constitution, etc., because that was the old Constitution that he was going to replace. And in fact, that's the first thing he did, to organize a constituent assembly where the delegates were elected by the people. They started working out a draft, I repeat, a draft Constitution there, and presented to the people for their own input. And the people participated massively in it, and changed many of the articles in the Constitution, and then another draft was made. And finally, it was presented to the people in a referendum. And the vast majority of the people voted in the referendum and voted in favor of that Constitution.
That's amazing.
Right, and it's even...
Was made that way.
Pardon?
I said because our Constitution was.
So you know about that.
Yeah.
How did the U.S. Constitution come into being at the end of the 18th century? It was just imposed by a handful of white slave owners and wealthy people, and the vast majority of people were completely excluded from that Constitution. And that's the same Constitution that exists today in 2013. And when the American leaders go all over the world saying this is the oldest democratic constitution in the world and all that, it's true that it's very old, but should it not be renovated? Like they have these old clauses, the right to bear arms.
Yeah, just because it's old doesn't mean it's sacred.
Exactly.
It can be changed.
Right.
And I think it's very important because the laws have to fit the needs of the people.
Exactly.
When, for example, one comes to this country, one really gets shocked about, for example, what happened in schools. Why the poorest district have the poorest schools? Doesn't make any sense. What you have to do is to set a budget and give equally to all, or to give more to those schools that kind of have problems, are understaffed, or have kids that you need more resources. So, but it's all the contrary what is happening here. The rich have a richer school, and the poor have no way out. They have
There's
to.
stuff there.
Yeah.
That's something that never could think of something like that in Venezuela. That's something totally. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Like those kind of things. And when, of course, you engage into a constitution, you have to discuss that. Why they are giving more money to the rich schools? So it doesn't make any sense. We have to kind of share and divide the budget more equally. And you can debate, how's life, how's society, how's the society you want to live in.
Yes, I was lucky to have been in Caracas twice in the last, in 2013. And it's such a vigorous place for discussion and debate. Like the Bolivarian Revolution, as they call the revolution in Venezuela, doesn't matter what happens, it's there to stay. That's my opinion. The United States are trying everything to destroy it through a coup d'etat or other provocations or whatever, but it's there to stay. It's part of the Venezuelan political scene. And I think it's important, in addition to looking at Cuba, also looking at Venezuela. And I think one has to take into account, we have to be careful that, watch out, that the United States is going to try for some kind of a provocation, an incident, during the municipal elections in December. And the main goal of the United States is to provoke incidents and then use these incidents to get involved in that country, to interfere in that country, try to change the course of the country, change the government, so they put into place a pro-American government. a government that is not for socialism or change, but rather is in favor, as you say, of capitalism. So I'm just giving you a heads up of things that might be happening in Venezuela. So it's really,
Interesting term, pro-American.
yeah. Well, they never say that, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
the thing. I mean, they say such and such a government, is okay, but they don't say why. That such a government is okay if it's pro-American. But if a government stands for its own sovereignty and independence, they don't like that. We have to overthrow that government. So that's what it's all about, and I'm really happy that you came this evening. It's a pleasure for me, and I guess that people are coming in. We have to sort of prepare for as far as I'm concerned, the second part of this meeting, because the first part of the meeting was this right here. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.